the mid-90s, the Sony PlayStation was a major hit with its advanced 3D technology, CD-based games, and excellent exclusive titles. Nintendo needed to establish their new console as the premier gaming system if they were to compete with Sony, and Silicon Graphics was their best chance. Silicon Graphics Incorporated was at the cutting edge of 3D graphics in the 1990s.
And with an eye to the future, tomorrow begins today. Nintendo, the world's leader in video games, has joined forces with Silicon Graphics, the world's leader in visual computing, to introduce the most exhilarating, breathtakingly realistic 3D video entertainment ever witnessed. Project Reality.
But successfully launching a console would take more than just great hardware. They would need great games. Super Mario 64 was in the works to be the killer app for Big N's new machine, but at least in North America, that was it, except for Pilotwings 64. Hey, it's me, Scotty, and today we're looking at the history of Pilotwings 64. The story of Pilotwings 64 is also the story of a partnership between Paradigm Simulation and Nintendo. Paradigm Simulation was known for writing flight simulation software for major aerospace and government companies such as NASA and Lockheed Martin. Much of this software was designed for computer workstations manufactured by Silicon Graphics. Paradigm had a foot in the entertainment industry too. They frequently made a presence at the annual Consumer Electronics Show as well as E3, showing off impressive video game demos that drew crowds. One demo shown at E3 was a prototype of a flight simulation game entitled Vampire. I have no idea what Defense Department simulations look like, but if they are this good, I might consider joining the Air Force. Ashley Dunn, Los Angeles Times. This demo never reached mainstream systems due to the ridiculous system requirements. However, some demos did eventually make it to home computer systems. One notable demo was Certain Impact for Silicon Graphics computers. What makes this demo interesting is that it shortly preceded the launch of Pilotwings 64. The influences are striking, with realistic airplane physics and a large detailed world to explore. While technically impressive, the game lacked originality, and there was no allure to it. After all, it was a tech demo, but it's fair to say that Certain Impact showed precedent for the future work on Pilotwings 64. In another phase of Paradigm history, the company partnered with Magic Edge Incorporated to develop an aircraft simulation ride called Hornet 1. The simulation was revolutionary for its time, rocking a state-of-the-art Silicon Graphics Onyx computer system, providing high-definition 3D graphics at 60 frames per second, as well as network functionality, allowing 6 units to link up and play in the same game. Just keep in mind, this was 1993, when graphics on home consoles still looked like this. Gameplay for Hornet 1 was just like the demo shown at E3, except this time, the machine rocked the players around to simulate G-forces acting on the pilot.
Make some room for me. Thank you. Oh no! The carrier got me.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it was you? Oh, bummer.
The Hornet simulator was a remarkable piece of tech, but it was perhaps too far ahead of its time. It cost an arm and a leg at $750,000 for a set of 6 units, and even more to maintain over the years. The result was a market failure, and the simulation ride, along with Magic Edge, faded into obscurity. Despite the failed venture with Magic Edge, Nintendo was impressed with Paradigm's work and contracted them to co-develop Pilotwings 64. Prior to working with Nintendo on the game, Paradigm spent 9 months developing a technical base for the Pilotwings engine. When Nintendo joined production, they took the role of game design, while Paradigm continued to develop on the technical side. The game was directed by Nintendo's Makoto Wada and produced by Shigeru Miyamoto and Genyo Takeda. Dave Gatchell, the general manager of Paradigm Simulation, stated that at first, they took a more realistic, physics-based approach, but were steered towards making sure the game would always have a more arcade-like feel, presumably an influence from Nintendo. The team took inspiration from the original Pilotwings, studying how each vehicle performs. Gatchel explained that the technology they were working with influenced the development of the game, as they were able to design large, detailed islands to explore, just like their previous work on Hornet and Certain Impact. Gatchel recalls working with Nintendo and described the positive support, freedom provided, and intensity of production. Nintendo was a great organization to work with, and the experience of developing a launch title was truly unique. Dan Hess was assigned to compose the soundtrack for Pilotwings 64. He was a member of the Paradigm team who had previously worked on Paradigm sound products as well as the music tracks for the Magic Edge simulator. Due to memory limitations, Hess had to string together sounds in MIDI sequences that would play in real time instead of pre-recorded music tracks. In an interview, Hess provided insights about what it was like working with Japanese Nintendo employees on the music, saying that Japanese descriptions of music types were worlds apart from Western descriptions. He also recalls lengthy meetings with the Japanese representatives, where the interpreter would struggle to mediate communication across the language gap. Makoto Wada would frequently disapprove of Hess's early renditions of the score, but showed interest in Hess's work on the Magic Edge project. From there, they created the floaty, fluffy tune for the hang glider levels. Hess began to gain the approval from Wada-san and started composing tunes that incorporated aspects of soul, funk, and even rhythm and blues music. These compositions had distinctly Western influences, and Hess was surprised how accepting Wada-san was for them despite the contrast to Japanese composers. Birdman is perhaps the most famous Pilotwings tune and became a personal favorite of Hess. At one point, Hess put up the Birdman track on speakers. At that very moment, Wada-san happened to be walking down the hall just outside of Mike's office. He stood in the doorway and listened for a moment, a grin growing on his face, and began to jump up and down, flapping his arms.
Birdman?
I asked, and his head nodded excitedly. When all was said and done, Hess managed to complete the entire Pilotwings 64 soundtrack with a file size of less than a single megabyte. After being displayed at the Shoshinkai Show and E3, Pilotwings released on June 23, 1996 in Japan and September 26 in North America. Many of the features that made the original Pilotwings an accessible but challenging game made it over. They ditched Mode 7 graphics in favor of full polygonal 3D. There are tons of quirky little secrets, and the game is full of personality. Using the analog stick to control aircraft provides a high level of precision that is still easy to learn. There's a great deal more mission variety than the previous game, with bouncing ball levels, target shooting levels, and even boss battles. There are very specific instructions on how scoring is done so that the player knows exactly how they can improve. Bonus levels are back, this time as their own side modes. You earn them by achieving higher medals in the main levels. Pilotwings 64 has a model of encouraging players to improve by offering more bonus content as a reward. Once again, it is accessible to newcomers while rewarding advanced play. While the game has performance issues and looks blurry by today's standards, it still manages to impress with its beautiful, detailed environments. Sales for Pilotwings 64 were slow at first, but that's to be expected when juxtaposed with Super Mario 64. Reception for the game was overwhelmingly positive, with high review scores across the board. Critics were impressed with the graphical presentation and expansive worlds to explore. Rich Ledbetter probably said it best. The sedate nature of the gameplay might not appeal to everyone, but the bottom line is that Pilotwings 64 is an unparalleled test of skill, dexterity, and control. It is a game that you must own, and whilst not quite in the same league of must-have-itude as Super Mario 64, it remains an astounding achievement and another triumph for Nintendo. Contrary to the positive reviews, other journalists called the game brain-dead, and even claimed that children would rather fly a dragon on the Sony PlayStation. Despite a few harsh reviews, Electronic Gaming Monthly awarded Pilotwings 64 Flying Game of the Year, and the game went on to sell over 1 million copies. The partnership with Nintendo helped Paradigm Simulation kick off their video game career. The team was eager to make a sequel, but Nintendo turned them down due to inadequate resources at the time. Paradigm Entertainment became a spin-off company of Paradigm Simulation, and went on to make several more games before ceasing operations in 2006. Working with Nintendo helped show Paradigm that engineering isn't quite as important as imagination. That's all for this episode. Thanks for watching.